All right, welcome in to Vision Pros Live. With Jackson Callum, I'm your show host. We'll be doing interviews for visionary entrepreneurs and guest leaders who are building fantastic visions out there. What's up, everybody? Welcome into another episode of Vision Pros Live. I'm your show host, Jackson Callum. I'm super excited to have Andy Halko on stage today because he's going to be talking about a subject that's near and dear to my heart, and we need more experts talking about this. We're talking about something most companies accidentally get wrong, and that means talking from a position of customer-centric language in a world, as Andy puts it, that gets flooded with tactics and tools. Real growth comes from a much deeper shift, and we're talking about the shift of really focusing in on relationships. We have two companies up here that I highly recommend taking a look at that understand the value of customer-centric approach. Home Studio Mastery with Junaid Ahmed helps people build out podcast studios. Not ones that look like this. He didn't build this podcast studio. This wall was built by an engineer in Ecuador. I'm down in Ecuador right now, not in my typical office, but I also help people launch podcasts and get started. I went live on Facebook, called it a podcast. My team made fun of me a little bit, and I said, you know what? It's my podcast. It's okay. I don't have to have all the fancy stuff. Eventually, we grew into some fancier stuff. But if you really want to build a great podcast and climb the ranks into the top percent of podcasts in the world, Junaid is one of the people I recommend working with on that. He knows how to listen to, hear you, and help you do just that. And then I've got Dr. Danny Brissell up here. Dr. Danny Brissell has a program called The Reading Habit. And with The Reading Habit, he helps parents inspire children to have a passion for reading. And the challenge with reading that he's helped me see is that 4 out of 5 readers that struggle are boys. There's a lot of challenges that he talks about in relation to that. So if you have a boy or a girl who is struggling to read, I highly recommend, again, talking to Danny. He speaks all over the world in this. He's helped thousands upon thousands of educators with this. He's one of the best speakers I've ever met. Worked with him now for about a year, and I absolutely love Danny Brissell. He's a good person, and he's a good person because he cares about the people that he serves. So again, that's what we're going to dive in today. They're just 2 examples that you can potentially model. And then, of course, there's the Water Project that serves their people really well. Once again, a great entity to go and learn in real time with a real example, exactly what Andy and I are about to talk about, the practical implementation. The Water Project is something that's near and dear to my heart because people in the world, when I learned that there's so many people, there's millions of people who don't have access to clean drinking water, that is a problem I have never had in my life. I've only ever been thirsty for a few hours, I think, at maximum. So when I found out that the Water Project does this thing where you can invest in a specific community and they will actually show you the outcome of your investment, I got kind of obsessed with it. And I see these children celebrating water with more enthusiasm than my kids celebrate Christmas Day. And that is a very humbling reality. Guys, you may have another cause out there that you want to support. There's 8 billion people that help in this world. And I think that those of us who have the privilege of rocking the mic or listening to a podcast, we have an opportunity to step up. Even if that doesn't mean we have the financial means, we can still share the idea, and you never know who you're going to touch that might be able to give 5,000, 10,000 or more to help generations of people have access to the basic essentials in life. So without further ado, let's dive in and serve you as well and start talking about this customer-centric language and what we can do as companies, as visionaries to be able to upgrade. Andy Halko, welcome to Vision Pros Live.
Hey, thank you for having me. This is fantastic. I love your vision of what you shared of just doing something bigger and better than just focused on yourself, which leads us into what we're talking about too.
Thank you, man. And way to close the loop on that. I like that. Let's talk about the next piece of vision for now. So the vision for those that you serve, you've established that quite well. It's about connecting with clients. I'm going to push you a little bit on this for both of our sakes. We're both mathematicians. We're going to go on the chalkboard with this concept, and I want to hear your ideas because it's going to also improve my vision and the way I go about things while we help the audience. So there's this thing called ICP out there, right? The ideal client profile, and your avatar, your audience, right? And defining all those. We can get into psychographics, we can get demographics. We're going to go deep, by the way, my friends. We're not going to stay surface level on this one. We're going to go to the deeper levels of conversion rate optimization, CRO, and making sure we really understand people. What I see happening in the market so often, Andy, when I ask people who they serve, what's the client they serve, I stopped asking that a long time ago because people suck at answering that question. They just do. I ask people now, who who is your typical client and who is your ideal client. And that tends to get people not to feel so defensive about it when they get it wrong. And they tend to get it less wrong when we talk about that. So the typical, what I see happen to business owners, and I want you to correct my theory if you need to, and say like, Jackson, no, it's not, there's something deeper here. Feel free to completely steamroll me, or feel free to jump on my bandwagon. But I tell clients, look, one of the biggest problems that you have is you're going to talk to about 100 people, and however fast you go through your own prospecting, only about 5% of the market in most cases are going to be the actual person that you need to talk to. But what happens is you get addicted to not hearing no. You don't want to hear no. You want to be rejected. So you start shifting your pitch to the typical client and catering your opportunities to talking to them. So when the 5% come along, they don't hear what they need to hear because you've been trying to cater to everybody else the entire time. So you lose sight of how to actually talk about what is needed by those 5% few who are in the market for what it is that you need. And they can't hear you because you got lost trying to people please everybody else who wasn't a fit. Am I wrong? Am I right? Is there more to it than that? Andy, the show's yours.
Man, is there a lot to unpack there? But I think you're exactly right. I would start it out of I am a big fan of two things: polarization and targeted segmenting, which is what you're really talking about. For me, the reason I'm so passionate about this buyer centric approach is that for me in a business, if you're developing a product and you're thinking of a lot of different people, you're creating features all over the place. But if you really narrow in on that ideal customer and understand their pains, their needs, what they're trying to solve, you're going to create a product that is so much more enticing and sticky. And then you move to marketing, and it's the same thing. If you understand their motivations and their, mindset, and again, their pains, you're able to create campaigns, landing pages that speak to them so deeply and resonate that you move people through the process like never before. And then that goes into sales. And if you understand buying decisions and committees and how people make decisions, that even the guy in B2B is going home and explaining what he's doing to his wife, and his wife is giving an opinion, right? And it's, you've got these complex buying approaches that end up happening in everything. And if you understand that, you can close more. And this keeps moving through the entire cycle of business, that you really need to understand that customer and you need to cater to them very deeply because it's so powerful. And so I believe that companies that hit plateaus or struggle, it's because they're not doing that. They're not getting in there and understanding that person and just infusing it into each one of those parts of their business.
Well, I love it. I opened a rabbit hole, and you just found a field of rabbit holes. Um, you just expanded upon it, Andy. I got to ask you right now. I got to get you back on the show too. I would love to dive in deeper on this and make sure that we really honor this process because I've had a lot of great guests in the show. We've had over 1,000, if not over 3,000, and I don't think we've ever had a single person talk about the complex sales reality, the enterprise sales methodologies. And we live in a market where I'm going to tie that to another rabbit hole called the zero moment of truth that
Mm.
Google coined based on an old concept, an old principle called the moments of truth. And what you've just helped me like light on fire to in my own mind is okay, the zero moment of truth, which is where people now have an influence factor where everybody in their life can ultimately influence a buyer's decision because of the advent of the internet and ChatGPT and Google and things like that. So if I talk to a prospect and they go talk to their wife about it, their wife's no longer in the dark about decisions. She can go look at the reputation on Yelp or the reputation on Google or elsewhere. And so if we don't have our brands well positioned in the market to help assuage fears and help people understand the value of what it is they're committing to from the different level of influences that exist from a key influencer to again a spouse who is well-meaning, then we end up putting our prospects in a position to where the confused mind has to say no. So this is something that we need to dive in much deeper on.
Yeah,
And
there's a
that's
lot.
the
In
mindset
my
that works
first
it.
book, The Buyer Centric Operating System, I talk about hidden influencers, and whether it's in an organization and there's a coworker, whether it's a spouse, a friend, people have conversations. Especially that enterprise buying, that they're making a big decision that may take months. They're talking to multiple people. They're going to a random networking event and saying, "Oh, I'm looking to, implement an ERP system." And all of a sudden, 10 people in the room are talking to them about what they did, right? Or you go home and your wife is IT manager at another company, and she's like, "Hey, we're also looking at this, and here are the three that we were talking to."
Ooh,
And so in the book, I really talk about this idea that we end up focusing on the person that we're talking to in sales and being really obsessed about them. And we completely ignore this hidden world of other influences. And transparently, it gets into my second book that I just released, which is now that the biggest hidden influencer is ChatGPT,
yeah.
Grok, these other AI platforms, which are now, co-pilots in
Yep.
decision making, which is a whole different paradigm shift.
Huge. Huge. A super relevant example of that today. I spoke with a man in Pakistan who's looking to help us move Danny Brissell into Southeast Asia. Great man and brilliant, by the way. And as he's telling me this story to prove a specific point about marketing strategy, he brings up Spotify and their struggle to get into Pakistan and India and their one rupee launch that still struggled, and the reason why people buy based on emotions instead of based on logic. And yeah, well, he's telling me that I'm literally typing in ChatGPT as he's telling me that, to asking ChatGPT for the proof of the story, whether it's legitimate or not, whether there's other variables that have to do with it. And it gave us a deeper conversation about, okay, well, while that there's some elements of truth to that, there's also some other variables that exist. And so here I am with my hidden influencer that you're talking about. So you're like iteration 2.0 of Ken Blanchard. And I don't want to ruin Ken Blanchard's still alive here. He's 86 years old right now. And so all of you listening visionaries, you can go to this book, Raving Fans. You can go to the source, Ken Blanchard, and talk to him too. You can go to Andy Halko. You can read his books. If this type of stuff resonates with you, as visionaries, lean in to recruit such leaders to help you build your vision. That's what I do, and I'm going to be talking to Andy more. I'm like, okay, I don't have the ability to look at everything all at once, all the time. I need great leaders by my side in order to continue to build and expand my vision. So we'll definitely try to get Andy back on as soon as possible so we can dive deeper into this, because when you're launching a vision that's meant to scale, it is, as he said, it is really, really hard to stay focused on who is that customer, what do they need, how do we build what they need right now for them. I am of the mindset that it is far better to build broad and to get investors to do so. The challenge is, if your investment is running low, you need to be able to uptick conversions pretty quickly. And that's where what Jake Larson at Video Power does. And that's where Andy Halko comes into play, where it's like, okay, this can create a surge of revenue quite fast when you're able to hit on the head who it is you need to talk to and what it is you need to influence them to do and create an irresistible offer. And so there's a very important balance to both broad branding and direct conversions and getting people to move forward. And visionaries, I think most of you know that. Those of you who don't, well, you're welcome. I'm grateful that you can get this from us. And again, feel free to subscribe, like the show. Again, look up Andy Halko. Go check out Incivia and Buyer Twin. Go check out the books that he talked about as well. We'll bring him back on. We'll dive into more resources. And thank you guys all for being here today. Andy, I'll give you the last word. Anything you want to share to the audience before we shut down?
No, I think if you're out there trying to grow a company, just stay obsessed about that buyer. And then, now with my second book, The Omniscient Buyer, buyers are now AI influenced. So completely change the way you market and sell. Uh, the buyer has changed completely. So
I love that. What a great seed. And sure, I'm absolutely going to go check that out as well and see how that can influence me with helping my audience. This obsession we're talking about, my hope for all of you too, is that you realize that there's a synonym there. Obsession can also be synonymously used harmoniously with love. love your buyers, serve them well, help them, and we'll see you in the next episode. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.
Thank you for being here today. I'm really happy that you tuned in to Vision Pros Live. I'm looking forward to seeing your reactions as these episodes continue to move forward. This is going to get more and more fun. We'll have more and more engagement as well. We'll invite people to participate in the show. And thank you for giving us your time and attention. Have an excellent time building out your vision and becoming a vision pro yourself.